And our focus for today, aviation industry stakeholders have posited that concession is the only choice government has to attract private funds for the development of the nation's airport. It's becoming clearer that the only option Nigeria has to develop its airports and deploy state-of-the-art terminals, technology-based facilitation utilities and also synchronized security system is to attract external or local funding from investors. Government funding alone cannot support airport infrastructure development. Well, joining me now in our Lagos studio is Baba Yusuf, the Group CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company, to discuss these developments as the airspace is gradually opened and we have domestic flights already commenced, and we're also looking at international flights also resuming and efforts being fine-tuned to see all of this move smoothly. Good to have you on the Breakfast Show today.
Thank you.
Now, talking about sustaining efforts beyond the COVID-19's impact on the economy, no doubt it's immeasurable. By the end of the day, now, first and foremost, let's start off with your thoughts. What do you make of the plans by government to already put in place domestic flights resuming, and then we're working to fine-tune details for international flights to also commence?
Yeah, thank you very much. The pandemic is pretty much with us. That is very important for us to note. Possibly why we are looking at, the federal government is looking at, first of all, activating the domestic airspace. Very key is so that economic and socio-economic activities will resume. Excuse me. Without the air travels, there's a heavy impact on our socio-economic activities. So far, so good. We've seen the airlines resuming flights, even though the evaluation of that in the past 2-3 weeks has shown that the impact has been marginal on the survival of the aircraft. Of course, that also reflects on the purchasing power of the populace. Other sectors of the economics have not really fully come back into play, and that also affects travel. Of course, the debilitating impact of COVID-19 pandemic on aviation is also a reflection of how it has affected the entire value chains. The ripple effect of the impact. We heard from the Honorable Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, that the sector in Nigeria is losing about 21 billion naira monthly, with ripple effect on hospitality and tourism, manufacturing, agriculture, and the rest of the sectors. So by and large, the way to go is the way it is now, activating the domestic market, testing the waters, and then possibly later on, as also the international markets, airspaces are opening up, Nigeria could also go ahead and do the same.
Let's now talk about concession. So many analysts, like you say that this would help attract international funding to also upgrade and modernize the nation's airport and also remove political and government interference to a very large extent in terms of the management of facilities. It is also expected that the private sector operators would also prioritize effective management, human and fiscal capacity development. What do you make of this sort of culture and developing concession here in Nigeria to ensure that we have improved airport infrastructure?
Well, the airport concessioning discussion has been going on for a long time, and I think the federal government is doing the right thing, step in the right direction by activating the concession, project. But what is important, I think, is not the relevance of the concession, because we all know we are lagging behind. We are no longer competitive in the regional space and in the African market. Ghana is already edging into the market and taking a lead, which is not supposed to be. They have concessioned and privatized their airports years ago. South Africa has done the same. Nigeria, being a major market in Africa, needs to do the same. One of the concerns, I think, to consider into my mind, are the critical success factors for the concession. One is the integrity and the transparency of the process and transactions. Two is the relevance of the model that will be adopted to our socio-economic objectives. Three will be the quality of the legal framework vis-a-vis the interest of Nigeria and partners, what I call the win-win. Very important, especially for the mid to long term, so that we don't have a concession that will come back and have a negative impact on us, long term. And then also from a project management perspective, we need to have what I call the proper project execution quotient, to ensure that this project is well executed to achieve the objectives. And also importantly, robust stakeholder engagements to get buy-in. We've heard hue and cry from some of the critical stakeholders in the industry that cannot just be wished away or ignored. And I think a robust stakeholder engagement will help us get the buy-in so that we can have a successful concessioning of the 4 airports, which is actually part of the aviation sectorial reform roadmap by this administration.
Now let's start off with competitiveness and transparency. This is the core of any effort towards concessioning the 4 major airports in Nigeria today. And talking about concession, we also have to take a look at global competitiveness. ITA's book on airport ownership and regulation also sets out clearly safeguards of public value in a concession project. What should be the do's and the line of action going forward?
Okay, thank you very much. Taking it from our discussion earlier, I mentioned what I believe are critical success factors to the success of the concession. Critical success factors for the concession, one of which is integrity and transparency of the process and transparencies. So we'll take it from there and list those 5 as the do's. The model of concession is very key. We need to understand right from now, what kind of model do we adopt? We know it's a PPP model, but even within the PPP framework, there are different designs or different models to adopt. We must be very sure-footed regarding this because that will impact on the cost of the concession and the variables that will go to the various stakeholders in the concession, that is the partners, private and public. Also, like I mentioned, the legal framework must be watertight and in the overall interest of Nigeria and other partners. We hear a lot of stories about agreements that have been signed that come back to haunt us many years later. This is a major do, regarding the modeling and the crafting of the, all the legal frameworks that will guide the concession. And then also, the stakeholder engagement, I think, is a very, very key do. There is no how the concession, the PPP concession, can succeed without the total buy-in of all stakeholders. The staff unions and operators and all the various stakeholders in trying to achieve a common goal.
Now, if I'm important, still talking about infrastructure and being intentional about how much of investment we have in that aspect. In aviation in Nigeria today, one of the biggest lapses we have is looking at the maintenance, repair and overall facility at this point in time. We cannot have an aviation hub or even have a strong presence within the West African region without having maintenance, repair and overall facilities at the top-notch level, just like we have in advanced climes.
Yes, that's true. So let's take this from 3 perspectives. First of all, let's look at the numbers. According to Oliver Wymer's global fleet and MRO market forecast, the MRO demand will grow from 90 billion as it is this year to $130 billion by 2030. And that is a huge opportunity for MRO, market. And bringing it to Nigeria presents a huge socio-economic growth opportunity for the aviation sector, especially post-COVID-19. As we know, business will not be the same. So that presents opportunity by way of supporting the domestic airlines, repair and overhaul their aircraft with local currency, which will save a lot in a lot of foreign earnings that will be saved, and also provide operational expertise, quick turnaround of the aircrafts back on board. And as we can see with the total lockdown, a situation where you can't even take your aircraft across the continent for maintenance or repair, the MRO presents an opportunity even for the regional market. And then in terms of human capacity building, new skill sets will be introduced, and we see growth from that. But importantly, like you mentioned, that can we see aero contractors doing something, blazing the trail on MRO. But moving forward, the state of the airport infrastructure in Nigeria is what will determine the viability and sustainability of the MRO.
Let's now look at your forecast now in terms of the outlook for the second half of this year. We have to still explore the BASA agreement. We have to look at ways in which the EFCFTA will favor Nigeria. But at the end of the day, now coming to matters which we can possibly handle in Nigeria by ourselves. Let's look at the cost of aviation fuel. Now, we've seen airlines cut a whole lot of jobs. It's not easy sustaining the business at this point in time. Passenger demand has also dropped despite we see the economy gradually reopening. In terms of aviation fuel now, what can the government do a little more to reduce the burden on the part of domestic airline operators?
It goes back to the palliatives possibly, but I think from my perspective, there's little that can be done regarding the aviation fuel, which is driven by market forces, which of course is a global issue.
But we can't compare the cost of Jet A1 in Dubai and that in Nigeria.
Absolutely, and then you should know that we don't also refine most of these products, so we still have to import them, which is subject to the variables of import as well, which is a key issue. But yes, government can still consider that as part of the overall palliative structure that is being worked on currently.
Thank you very much for your contribution on the breakfast show today, Baba Yusuf, and a happy Eid celebration to you.
Thank you for having me, David.